Government does too much. It's bloated and wasteful. It provides too much and makes people dependent. The more simple the government is, the less problems we have. Common arguments of libertarians and the right. The government that governs best governs least. That's their motto. So let's look at these claims. Is the government too big? Does the government do too much? Do people become dependent on big government? Is a complex government bad? Well, what do you mean by big? Size is a loaded question. Let's think about it in digital logic circuits. A logic gate is made up of 1 to 2 semiconductor devices, either a diode or a transistor. When you start out with a basic design of a circuit, you will have a collection of and, or, and inverter gates. Here's a simple logic circuit. Here you have an inverter, or NOT gates, so if you have a voltage called 1 in binary on one end, you will not have a voltage on the other end, or a 0 in binary. Here is an AND gate, meaning both inputs have to have an input of 1 to get a 1 out. If you have a 0 on one input, the output is 0. 1 times 0 is 0, so we write this as multiplication. The lines over the top indicate NOT, so X is equal to NOT A and NOT B and NOT C. How would this circuit be useful? Well, let's say we have 3 pumps, and so long as at least one is running, everything is fine. When all pumps are out, you get an alarm. Let's suppose we want to add on and give a different function. Don't ask me what at this point. Now we have added 2 more AND gates and an OR gate. An OR gate requires at least 1 to get a 1 out. Think 1 plus 0 is equal to 1, so we list it as a plus sign. Now we want to add an extra feature, making it even more complicated. Quite often, what can happen if you design a circuit and decide to add extra features after a certain point, it can get bloated and huge. More bloating leads to slower speeds, more places for things to break, and a hacker can have more areas to take advantage of potential weaknesses. This circuit's too big, so you should just reduce its function and give up, right? Simpler is always better. The less it does, the less you will become dependent on it. Well, maybe not. As it turns out, this circuit is big only because it has a lot of redundancy. Using Boolean math, or Carnot mapping in this case, you can map out all the outcomes of the combinations. Here you group ones together. Where the C and not C cancel out, you are left with not A and not B. Next, we have a not C, not to be confused with Nazi, and here the B and the not B cancel out. And we're left with not A. Here is the formula. And suddenly, this becomes this, giving you the exact same result. It's much smaller and it produces all the same results as the huge bloated circuit. Of course, even this circuit would have been physically huge back when we only have vacuum tubes. However, when we learned to make semiconductors using science, their size shrank and their efficiency skyrocketed with new technology. As of 2013, the VA and ATF were stuck using paperwork, as well as our bloated medical system. If they had the funding they needed to rapidly switch over to computers and better databases, which is something they're slowly doing, then they could work with less people, be more efficient, and have less errors, and actually do more with less. But more is bad, right? Even when government is smaller technically, more efficient and less bloated? This goes to the argument that people will become dependent on government. Perhaps the real question should be, is dependency a bad thing? Dependency is a word linked with addiction. It's also linked with weakness, or a child, or invalid, or laziness acting as a leech. This word is much like Velcro. Velcro is efficient, quick, holds better than laces. However, because of this, Velcro is often used for children, the elderly, and the mentally and physically disabled. Most people still wear inefficient, archaic laces. That null technicality should only be used for a retro look, but they are everywhere because the public subconsciously doesn't want their image tied with someone weak or childish. The word dependency was selected for politicians by people in PR, well-versed in framing to conjure up very negative emotions and thoughts. So let's take a different view of dependency. I didn't have a cell phone till 2007 because I had this weird idea that I wanted to keep things simpler, and I didn't want to become dependent on a phone. I would hear people complain about modern tech and see jokes about getting sucked into the system or being available to be called at all times. It is correct, it does have issues sticking with a landline would not have. But that's only because the cell phone is doing so much more than a landline is doing all at once. It frees up time and energy from carrying things. And every new upgrade comes with its own new set of problems I didn't have on my last phone or last upgrade. But that's because it can do so much more, and I don't have to worry about the problems my last phone had. Everything is a work in progress. The next level gets better and more efficient, but now with newer problems and more levels of complexity and efficiency. If you focus only on the new problems and the simplicity of the old system, it of course looks better, but that's skewing the data and perception by not looking at the improvements overall. You can do more with a new phone, with less effort, and way more options than you could dream of with an old phone. You're able to carry around a lot less, keep in touch better, and it's more streamlined and slim. And there are habit changes you have to be aware of to correct. The phone company is in the business of making money by having you stay on your phone more dependency. The government is in the business of helping you when you need it, encouraging more growth by, say, giving tax breaks, or helping you make sure we all have financial protection when we're older, because not all of us have the knowledge base to invest wisely, do the research on a financial investor, and not go into retirement around the time of an economic crash. A trapeze artist has serious dependency on safety nets, and without it, there is no way they could practice and make mistakes and learn to become great at what they do. These nets are there even among the most experienced, even if they aren't visible, to the point they're taken for granted. Just like all of us who benefit and are reliant on safety nets in ways we aren't even aware of. If there's a problem with people laying in safety nets and bumming off of it and not getting out, that doesn't mean we need to shrink the safety nets or eliminate it completely. That's an engineering problem that should be tackled to increase incentive and ensure opportunity to act as a ladder for people to get out of the safety net if they want. Quite often when coming out of poverty, people don't have the first clue to live outside of poverty and are so used to spending paycheck to paycheck that they don't know how to change their habits to do things like savings and retirement that the middle class just takes for granted, and then one bad thing happens and they slide back into poverty. Also, with a shrunken safety net, people aren't taking as much risk to start businesses because they would be devastated and impoverished if they fail, which is actually the majority of businesses. If you can't take a risk or chance, you can't learn what not to do so you can succeed again later. Bankruptcy protection is a safety net created by the government that all businesses rely on to catch them. But you never hear about the right vilifying it for corporations, just individuals. Obama has tried to have Congress give him a power once given to Reagan to merge regulatory agencies and eliminate a lot of redundancies, but they have refused to budge on that one. He wants to turn 5 bloated redundant agencies into one sleeker agency that can do its job better and waste less money. This would save corporations time and money because they wouldn't have to go through 5 agencies and fill out all their forms and try to make sure they're playing by all 5 agencies' rules. While Republicans are trumpeting, see, regulation hurts business and government doesn't work. It's easy to break something and then scream it doesn't work, so let the free market take care of it. It only works if people aren't paying attention. In most other nations, they aren't even having this discussion. They fight over who can engineer laws and rules better to help more people. They see it as an experimental work in progress, like your cell phone, and you can vote for a mix of charismatic or celebrated political engineers who will tailor it, most to your specifications, within the limits of big business's regional influence. In the US, where people have been convinced that smaller government is always better, you get one side who is somewhat smart but has to be great at politics, or they can get nothing done, and a side that wants to break government and making government worse, and stopping it is the very foundation of their plan. And you don't have to be smart at all, just loud and completely unwavering to get elected. So next time someone tells you smaller government is better, ask them how, because you may agree with them, especially if they are the kind of people who don't know what the majority of the government spends money on, or haven't thought about what they yell out much. Below is a link to a graph of federal spending. It's quite probable that the little bit they do want to cut is ridiculously tiny compared to the major elephants in the room that need shrinking. Not to do less, but to be more efficient, such as the military. Hey there, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw from my channel, please subscribe and donate to my Patreon. If you have evidence to counter what I say, please provide it. If you would like to see what I was doing with this channel 6 years ago, please click the links on the screen. Thank you so much.